Elia's ward stood at the edge of the docking platform and watched the stars move slowly beyond the transparent shield. He had traveled farther than any human before him, yet he felt calm, not proud, not afraid, just ready. The station around him was enormous, built by many species working together. Its walls curved like the inside of a shell, glowing softly with alien symbols and shifting lights. Tall beings walked past him, some with scales, some with fur, some with skin like polished stone. Their voices mixed into a strange music of clicks, tones, and echoes. Elia's was small here, human, soft-bodied, no claws, no armor grown from bone, no psychic glow. On every known galactic scale, humans ranked low, weak muscles compared to others, short lives, no natural weapons. That was why he was here. He was Earth's representative to the Galactic Coalition, a group that decided trade, borders, and war. Most species expected little from him. Some thought humanity was a mistake, an accident of evolution that survived by luck. Elias felt their eyes on him as he walked forward, curious, dismissive, some amused. At the center chamber, a ring of elevated platforms waited. Each held a representative. Most were women, not by chance but by culture. In many advanced species, females held political and military authority. They were taller than Elias, broader, stronger. Their presence pressed down like gravity. One of them noticed him immediately. Her name was Saren of the Velari. Her skin shimmered faintly, changing color with emotion. She had seen war, ruled fleets, and broken enemies with her mind alone. When she looked at Elias, she expected to feel nothing. Instead, she frowned. The human walked without hesitation. His posture was relaxed but not careless. He did not lower his eyes. He did not raise his chin. He moved as if he belonged, even though he clearly did not. Saren felt a strange pull, like a thought she could not shake. Another representative noticed it too. High Strategist Lethara of the Koran, a towering figure with 4 arms and eyes like dark glass. She leaned forward slightly, studying Elias as he took his place. "He does not radiate strength," Lethara murmured through the translator field. "No," Saren replied quietly. "Yet something about him feels large." The session began. Questions came quickly. Why should humans be allowed full membership? What could Earth offer? What could it defend? Elias answered calmly. He did not boast. He did not beg. He spoke of cooperation, of learning, of responsibility. He admitted humanity's flaws openly, its history of war, fear, and mistakes. The chamber grew quiet. Many species hid weakness at all costs. Elias placed it on the table without shame. When challenged, he did not argue loudly, he listened. He responded clearly. When insulted, he did not react. When threatened, he did not flinch. Saren felt it again. That pull, stronger now, it made no sense. After the session ended, Elias was dismissed with polite indifference. He bowed slightly, turned, and walked away. Behind him, whispers began. He stood before the Koran without fear. He admitted failure and did not collapse. He feels steady. Saren watched him leave and realized something unsettling. She wanted to see him again. That night's cycle, the station suffered a power failure in one of its outer rings. An industrial habitat lost gravity, sending hundreds of workers into chaos. Emergency teams hesitated, radiation leaks, unstable structure. Elias did not wait, he ran. By the time security realized what he was doing, he was already inside the damaged ring, boots magnetized, moving through spinning debris. He helped workers stabilize themselves, guided them to safety, and sealed a breach manually while alarms screamed around him. His suit cracked. Radiation levels rose. He kept working. Saren arrived moments later with her own guards, psychic shields flaring. She expected to find bodies. Instead, she found Elias kneeling beside an injured alien child, holding the torn metal apart with shaking hands so others could pull the child free. His face was pale. Sweat floated around him in small spheres. His hands trembled. Yet he smiled at the child and spoke gently, even though she could see the pain tearing through him. Something in Saren snapped. This human was breaking and refusing to stop. When medical teams finally pulled Elias away, he lost consciousness. His body gave in only after everyone else was safe. Saren stood still long after he was gone. Later, she visited the medical wing. Humans healed slowly compared to many species. Fragile bones, vulnerable organs. Elias lay still, wrapped in soft fields, breathing steadily. Saren felt her emotions shift colors rapidly: confusion, curiosity, concern. "This makes no sense," she whispered. Another voice answered her. "I thought the same." Lethara stood nearby, arms folded. "You were watching him too," Saren said. "Yes," Lethara replied. "I cannot explain it. His species should not inspire this response." They stood in silence, observing the human. "He has something," Lethara continued slowly. "Something big," Saren nodded. When Elias woke, he found two powerful alien leaders waiting for him. He struggled to sit up. "I'm sorry if I broke protocol," Saren tilted her head. "You saved lives that were not your own." "Why?" Elias shrugged weakly. "They needed help." Lethara studied him closely. "You knew the risk." "Yes." "And you went anyway." "Yes." "Why?" Elias looked confused by the question. "Because someone had to." That answer stayed with them long after he was released. Over the following cycles, Elias continued his duties. He worked longer than required. He listened more than he spoke. When conflict arose between species, he volunteered as mediator, walking into hostile rooms with nothing but words and patience. Slowly, more alien women noticed. A Velari scientist who had never trusted outsiders found herself explaining her life's work to him for hours. A Koran captain invited him to observe training, surprised when he asked thoughtful questions instead of making excuses for human weakness. They began to feel it too, not attraction, not desire, something deeper. Being around Elias made them feel grounded, focused, seen. Saren finally admitted the truth to herself during a private council meeting. "I think I am becoming dependent on his presence," she said quietly. Lethara's eyes widened slightly. "As am I." Neither felt shame, only confusion and a growing need to understand. Elias, unaware of the effect he was having, continued forward, carrying the quiet weight of humanity with him. And somewhere in the vast station, a dangerous idea began to spread. If one human could do this, what would happen when more arrived? The days after the accident changed the rhythm of the station. Elias Ward returned to his duties with a slight limp and a medical brace along his ribs, but otherwise the same as before. He did not speak of what he had done. He did not ask for recognition. When others thanked him, he nodded and moved on. That quiet behavior made the effect stronger. Saren noticed it first in herself. She began adjusting her schedule without meaning to, aligning meetings so they crossed with Elias' movements. She told herself it was strategy, curiosity, duty. Yet each time she saw him walking through the corridors, a strange calm settled inside her. Her species lived with constant emotional intensity. The Velari felt deeply and quickly. War burned hot in them. Politics was sharp and exhausting, but near the human her thoughts slowed, focused. It felt like relief. Lethara experienced something similar, though she resisted it more. The Koran believed in discipline and structure. Dependence was weakness. Still, she found herself inviting Elias into discussions she once would have kept closed. Not because he was human, because when he listened, conflict softened. A border dispute between two minor species nearly turned violent during one council session. Voices rose. Claws scraped stone. Psychic pressure filled the chamber. Elias spoke once. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He asked each side to explain not what they wanted, but what they feared losing. The room changed. By the end, weapons were lowered. Negotiations resumed. Afterward, one of the alien commanders stared at Elias in open disbelief. "You manipulated us," she accused. Elias shook his head. "No, I just listened." Word spread. Soon, Elia's presence was requested more often than required. He became a common figure in places of tension, mediation chambers, military planning rooms, research labs struggling with impossible problems. Always the same result: progress. Saren began to feel uneasy. Velari culture taught that obsession crept in quietly. What began as fascination could become dependence, then loss of self. She had seen entire civilizations collapse because of it. She called a private meeting with Lethara and two other senior leaders, Visira of the Thal, a species known for emotional distance, and Keelan, a battle-hardened matron admiral. They gathered in a quiet observation hall overlooking the stars. "This concerns the human," Saren said directly. No one pretended not to understand. "He is becoming a stabilizing variable," Lethara said. "That alone is dangerous." Visira tilted her smooth, reflective head. "I have analyzed productivity metrics. Conflict resolution improves by 37% when he is present." "That is not normal," Keelan said. "No species should have that effect without coercion." Saren folded her hands. "And yet none of us feel coerced." Silence followed. "I will say this plainly," Saren continued. "I find myself seeking his presence. That is unacceptable for a Velari leader." The others exchanged glances. "You are not alone," Visira admitted. "I feel unsettled when he is absent." Lethara exhaled slowly. "Then we must determine whether this is manipulation or something inherent to humans." They decided to observe more closely. Elias, meanwhile, faced a different challenge. Humanity had sent a second delegation, military advisors and corporate observers. They were alarmed by reports of Elias' growing influence. One of them, Colonel Mason, confronted him directly. "You're becoming a symbol," Mason said. "That's dangerous." Elias frowned. "I'm just doing my job." "That's the problem," Mason replied. "You're changing how they see us, too fast." Elias understood the fear. Humans had learned painfully that attention could turn into hostility overnight, but he also saw something else. "They're not afraid of us," Elias said quietly. "They're afraid of themselves around us." Mason did not like that answer. Not long after, the crisis began. A deep space mining colony went silent near an unstable region of space known for gravity distortions. Initial probes vanished. Automated signals returned only static and strange echoes. Several species proposed quarantine. Elias volunteered to join the investigation team. "This is not your role," Saren said sharply when she heard. "Someone has to go," Elias replied, "and humans handle uncertainty well." "That is not a compliment," she said. He smiled faintly. "I'll take it anyway." Against her better judgment, Saren insisted on joining the mission. Lethara and Keelan followed. The ship was a multi-species vessel, tense with unease as it entered the distorted region. Instruments failed. Gravity shifted unpredictably. Some crew members panicked. Elias stayed calm. When the ship shuddered, he anchored himself and helped others. When communications failed, he adapted. He spoke reassuringly, even when he had no answers. The mining colony emerged from the distortion like a ghost. Structures twisted, lights flickered. No movement. The team docked cautiously. Inside, they found survivors traumatized, exhausted, many injured. The distortion had warped time perception. For them, weeks had passed in terror and isolation. Alien medics struggled. The survivors were unresponsive, locked in fear. Elias knelt beside one trembling miner and spoke softly. Simple words, steady tone. The miner focused on his voice. Others followed. Saren watched in silence as panic slowly loosened its grip. During evacuation, a sudden surge collapsed part of the station. A heavy beam pinned Saren's leg. Pain flashed white through her senses. Before guards could react, Elias was there, bracing the beam with his body. "Don't," she warned. "Your bones." "I know," he said through clenched teeth. "Hold still." The beam shifted just enough for her to be freed. Elias collapsed immediately after, Back on the ship, medics worked frantically. His injuries were severe: internal bleeding, cracked spine. Saren stood outside the medical bay, her emotions burning too bright to control. "This is beyond fascination," she said to Lethara. "This is becoming necessity." Lethara did not argue. When Elias woke days later, the ship was already returning to the station. Saren visited him alone. "You are damaging yourself," she said. He met her gaze. "So did you," she hesitated. "Why do you do this?" Elias thought for a long moment. "Because if I don't, then everything I am doesn't matter." That answer shook her more than any psychic strike. Back at the station, reactions were mixed. Some species celebrated the success of the rescue. Others grew afraid. A faction within the coalition proposed restrictions on human involvement. Psychological audits, presence limits. "Humans are altering decision-making patterns," one delegate argued. "This is influence without consent." Elias attended the hearing. He listened as concerns were voiced. He did not interrupt. When given the chance to speak, he said only this: "We don't want to control anyone. If our presence helps, use it. If it scares you, we will step back." The chamber waited for more. That was all he said. The vote was postponed. Afterward, Saren found him standing alone again, watching the stars. "You would leave," she said softly. "If asked," he replied. She felt something tighten inside her. "Then we must understand this," she said, "before fear decides for us." Elias nodded. Neither of them noticed how many others were quietly watching the human and wondering how something so fragile could feel so overwhelmingly strong. And deeper still, the galaxy was beginning to sense an uncomfortable truth. Whatever humans carried with them was not fading. It was growing. The station did not feel the same anymore. Elias Ward could sense it even before anyone said it out loud. Corridors that were once busy with loud voices now felt quieter when he passed. Not cold, watchful, curious, careful. The debate about humanity had spread beyond council chambers. It was everywhere, in mess halls, in research decks, in military planning rooms. Humans were no longer ignored. They were being studied. Elias did not like that. He continued his work, but he felt the pressure growing. Invitations increased. Requests multiplied. Problems that had nothing to do with Earth somehow ended up on his schedule. And with every success, fear grew alongside admiration. Saren saw it clearly now. The galaxy was not afraid of humans because they were strong. It was afraid because humans changed things just by being present. A closed emergency council was called. This time Elias was not invited. Saren, Lethara, Visira, Keelan, and many others gathered in a sealed chamber. The atmosphere was tense. "This cannot continue," a delegate said. "Our leaders hesitate without the human present. That is unacceptable." "He does not command us," another argued. "We choose to listen." "That choice is the problem," the first replied. "Dependence begins with choice." Lethara spoke next. "Then what do you propose?" "Limit human influence. Remove Ward from high-risk zones. Keep him confined to advisory roles only." Saren felt anger flare. "You want to cage him." "I want to protect this coalition," the delegate snapped. The argument grew louder. Then the alarms sounded. Not local alarms, deep space priority alarms. A signal burst through every channel at once, raw, distorted, filled with panic. An unknown entity had emerged near a populated trade route. Ships were vanishing, not destroyed. Gone, no debris, no energy signature. Sensors showed massive gravitational instability spreading like a wound. A silence fell over the chamber. "This matches the distortion patterns from the mining colony," Visira said quietly, "but far larger. If it spreads," Keelan added, "entire systems will collapse." Fear tightened the room. "Where is Elias Ward?" someone asked. Saren did not answer immediately. Elias was in a quiet observation deck alone when security found him. "You are needed," the officer said. Elias nodded and followed without a word. In the war chamber, hollow images showed star systems flickering out like dying lights. Every species had lost ships attempting to investigate. Psychic probes failed. Autonomous weapons vanished. Long-range attacks did nothing. This entity does not respond to force, Lethara said. It consumes it. Eyes turned to Elias, not because he had answers, because he had stood where others could not. Elias studied the data slowly. He asked questions, simple ones. What happens before a ship disappears? Is there any pattern in survivor reports? Has anyone tried staying instead of escaping? The room was quiet as experts answered. Finally, Elias spoke. It reacts to panic, he said, to resistance. Several delegates bristled. That is speculation. Everything here is, Elias replied calmly. But humans have seen this before, not in space but in disasters, fires, collapses, fear feeds chaos. So what do you suggest? Saren asked. Elias looked at the expanding dark zone. I suggest we go in slowly, he said. No weapons, no psychic shields, no fight. Outrage erupted. That is suicide. You would risk an entire crew. Elias met their gazes one by one. I will go alone. The room froze. Saren stepped forward. Absolutely not. This is my choice, Elias said gently. If I'm wrong, you lose one human. If I'm right, you save millions. Silence followed. Finally, Lethara spoke. Humans are fragile. Yes, Elias agreed. That's why this might work. Against all reason, the plan was approved. A small human vessel was prepared, unarmed, minimal shielding, piloted by Elias alone. No escort, no backup. As he boarded, Saren walked beside him. You are not expendable, she said, voice tight. Elias smiled softly. No one is, that's why I'm going. She reached out, stopping herself just short of touching him. If you do not return, he looked at her. Then remember us as we were, not as a threat. The ship launched. Across the station, countless eyes watched. The human vessel entered the distortion zone. Sensors screamed, then fell silent. Time stretched. Inside the ship, gravity twisted. Space folded. Fear pressed in like a living thing. Elias felt it, not as a monster, as despair. Images filled his mind, loss, failure, loneliness. The weight of every human fear layered together. He breathed. He remembered standing in disaster zones on Earth, holding shaking hands. Saying, I'm here, he did the same now. I'm here, he said aloud. He did not fight the presence, he acknowledged it. I see you. The pressure shifted. The distortion slowed. Elias felt himself being pulled apart, not physically but emotionally. Every doubt surfaced. Was humanity a mistake? Did he matter? He answered with truth. Yes, we matter, he whispered, even when we're afraid. The darkness recoiled. Outside, sensors across the galaxy flared back to life. The expansion stopped. Then slowly, the distortion collapsed inward, folding into nothing. The human ship emerged, damaged, silent, alive. Cheers erupted across the station. Some wept openly. Others stood in stunned silence. Medical teams rushed as Elias was brought aboard on a stretcher. He was alive but barely conscious. Saren stayed with him. When he woke, the room was full, not with celebration, with respect. You did not overpower it, Vesira said softly. You endured it. That is what humans do, Elias replied weakly. The coalition reconvened days later. This time the decision was unanimous. Humans would not be restricted, they would not be controlled, they would be trusted. Saren spoke last. We feared addiction, she said, but this is not dependence, this is alignment. She looked at Elias. Humans remind us why we reach for the stars in the first place. Elias returned to the observation deck one final time before Earth's next delegation arrived. The stars looked the same, but the galaxy did not. Saren joined him. You changed everything, she said. Elias shook his head. We just showed up, she smiled, a rare, honest expression. And far beyond the station, among countless worlds, a new understanding spread. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They were not the most powerful. But they carried something bigger than all of that. And once the galaxy felt it, it could never let go.